request Mr. Govinda to please join us on stage for the first panel discussion. Mr. R. Govinda, Vice Chancellor, NUEPA.
Maybe a very good morning to you all. At the outset, I would like to compliment the New Indian Express, Mr. Santalia and Mr. Prabhu Chawla, for hosting this event. Because to my mind, these are the events which bring about all the stakeholders on one platform. And more importantly, not only to discuss, but set a direction for improving the education quality in this country, for setting an agenda, for taking forward the education not only in cities but the rural India, rural landscape. And I'm a firm believer, if India has to find its place under the sun once again, if India has to be amongst the top 3 economies in the world, education is the only tool which will enable our young children to deliver that in future. But there is an underlying factor. My belief is today all of us have failed. What we are trying to do is give education to our children. What we are trying to do is influence and force them to get educated, get into the rut of competition. But as a society, as teachers, as parents, we have failed to provide them value system. And to me, this makes a huge difference. A human being and being human, there is a vast difference between these two. So with this, let me first of all set the landscape. I think the most important thing, legislation which has happened in the last couple of years, has been the Right to Education Act, which was implemented in 2010. And while there were many factors and many facets to that, but more importantly, free and compulsory education for all the children in the age group of 6 to 14. No child shall be held back, expelled, or required to pass an examination up to the elementary level. Increase access to EWS students, 25% reservation quota, which I believe is a very good thing, but the implementation is something which is wanting. And also the teacher qualification and mandating the teacher's eligibility test. I think these, to my mind, have been the cornerstones of the Right to Education Act policy. What has it yielded? There has been a significant change in the number of schools, which increased from under 1 million to 1.4 million, where growth of 58%. Government schools increased from 1.18 per village to 1.66. 84% schools located in rural areas. Private schools' share in the total went up from 16 to 24%. And overall, 96% of our children today are enrolled. Is this what we were looking for? I think to my mind, this has only met one agenda, one side of the agenda of providing a platform for education to all the children. While more schools were added, while the enrollments went up, it has led to many, many challenges. And one of the basic factors which I have picked up during my visit to the 254 villages where we have set up the Satya Bharati schools, the state governments are not ready to accept that there are a large number still out of school children beyond the data which is presented. 96% enrollment has no meaning unless we see those children into the school, into the classrooms every day. Unless we see teachers teaching them education. Unless we see influencing the minds of those children to become the change makers. I think that is where we are failing. So the quality of education, if we look at the ACER's report from Pratham 2012, I mean, it's an irony that on one hand we are showing a large number of enrollment in schools, on the other hand the learning levels of class 5 children, class 8 children have actually gone down in the last couple of years. So the outcome of Right to Education Act on quality education is not being met with. The second, to my mind, where we are saying no examinations to be conducted up to class 8. More and more state governments, more and more education ministers I have met with are clearly finding that this is becoming a problem. And to my mind, this is one agenda which needs to be taken back to the central government and the state governments to introduce the assessment back into the school system. The students are not taking studies seriously. They don't go to school. Teachers, either they don't come, if they come, they have stopped preparing for a class. The high absenteeism in schools is becoming a norm which was already there, and ultimately the learning levels have gone down. So to my mind, the drawbacks which I see in the Right to Education Act is the lack of outcome-based definition of quality of education, such as age-appropriate learning levels, student attendance, and teacher engagement. The second problem is, after the Right to Education Act was enacted by the Parliament, every state government has gone and put up their own guidelines under the Right to Education Act on infrastructure, on teachers, on teacher-student ratio, which is creating a problem. I mean, suddenly you find that state governments are saying that for a primary school, you need 2-acre land, 3-acre land, you need 10 rooms to be constructed. And my mind is where education is being provided by NGOs like Kiran's Navjyoti Foundation, Bharti Foundation like ours, and many societies and many other organizations which are providing either remedial education or they are providing free education like Bharti Foundation or at a very nominal cost. Now, do we go and invest in the infrastructure, building rooms and boundary walls for the school, or do I actually go and bring more children into the school and educate them? And the answer is, you have to meet the criteria, otherwise we will de-recognize you. I mean, this is something which is absolutely uncalled for. The other problem which I see is there are many innovative practices by the NGOs, societies, and foundations which are being put into the education system. Instead of learning from those innovations, we are actually trying to trash them. So as a matter of fact, I mean, if I see the RTE will actually end up closing down these private initiatives for lack of infrastructure. Where will these children go and study tomorrow? That's a big question which I'm raising. On the teaching quality, there's a huge gap between what teachers are required to learn and teach in view of changing requirement of society. Almost 1 million more teachers are required. Do we have the bench for recruiting those teachers? Do we have infrastructure to train those teachers? The institutions which are providing the degrees, B.Eds and M.Eds, are just commercial colleges. They are just taking money and giving degrees. I hire today 1,500 teachers in villages, and believe you me, they have a master's degree, they have a bachelor degree, but they don't know how to teach. What use is that degree of? So clearly, as Prabhu mentioned in the beginning, we need to look at a public-private partnership system. While he went on to by clearly saying that private sector should not go into profit-making through these, I want to bat on the other side, which is, why do the private initiatives need to go and build new schools? Why can't the existing government schools be provided to the private sector partners to manage and run them? Because that is where there's huge inefficiency in the system. Why do I need to go and put 10 crores of rupees in building a school for a class 12 senior secondary school? I can actually go and support the existing system and improve further. But for that, we also need a change in the mindset. Out of the 254 schools, so we have actually are in the midst of looking at 4 different models. When we started, we went to the panchayats, asked for land on lease, and put up buildings, took teachers on board, and started providing education. Now, clearly, building schools is a huge task, and as I just mentioned. So very quickly, then we thought that let's get into a partnership with the government. And I must say the Chief Minister, the then Chief Minister, Ms. Vasundhara Raje, who's come back into Rajasthan now, gave us 49 schools in Neemrana and Amer, where the school buildings were handed over to us. And the problem is the teaching community and the teaching system vitiates the environment so much in rural areas, and we have illiterate people there, they really don't understand. For the first 7 days, not one child walked into the school. And I can tell you, those 49 schools, they didn't have a separate toilet for girls, no drinking water, no electricity. We got everything done, and on the 8th day, the children started trotting in. And today, they actually run to school rather than run away from school. I think that's the difference with the private sector through its management mix. We are also now engaged with Haryana, Rajasthan, and Punjab on quality support programs. So finally, we are running pilots where we have partnered with Haryana in 3 senior secondary schools. And the idea is that it is your system, your teachers, your money, what you spend. The foundation will bring about innovative practices, its initiatives. I mean, I'm surprised there were no sports happening. There are no co-curricular activities which happen there. And the moment you go and tell them that we want to come and train teachers, they'll block the doors. They say, we know what we are doing, so you don't need to teach us. So there are softer issues which need to be looked at. Other schools is another public-private partnership with Punjab, where we put up 5 senior secondary schools out of the 254. And I think one of the biggest initiative which was launched by Dr. Manmohan Singh in 2007 of setting up 2,500 model schools in public-private partnership. We are in 2014. The first school has yet not come up. So the system takes that much long. But my view is that these schools will be a catalyst to start improving quality education. So these are the different models which we are using at this point of time. So my recommendations on the potential focus areas are promote public-private partnership in the area of education, but also recognize and encourage innovation. And without impacting the quality, relax norms on infrastructure for organizations to go and deliver education and educate the children who may actually become a problem for tomorrow, for the society. Uniformity in the key policies covering all states and union territories. Infrastructure norms must be uniform. And of course, we need to start training and capacity building, not only for the teachers, but also the teaching staff and the education staff in the state governments. I will stop here, and before I call the first panelist to come and share his views, I can only say today this is inaugurated on 30th January, a day when the nation remembers Mahatma Gandhi. And I'm reminded of his words when he said, be the change you want to see in the world. I think we Indians expect someone else to make a change, someone else to bring about the change. And we think nothing is applicable on me, and I'm including myself. I'm not sort of casting any aspersions here. But the matter of fact is each one of us is responsible. And to my mind, Bharati Foundation's foray into rural areas. So these 254 schools are all in village schools, or all in villages. 39,000 children today are getting free education. We don't charge a single rupee. We focus on the girl child. 49% are girl students. The world has changed. Like Bharati, I meet parents every time I go in the villages, and they say, we don't want our children to lead the lives which we had led. We want them to prosper. And to my mind, organizations like Bharati Foundation, and there are many others in this room, will be the catalyst to bring about this change. We will have these 39,000 ambassadors who are acting as change makers in villages. You'll be surprised when they push their parents to brush their teeth twice a day, to bathe every day. The kitchen is dirty. The clothes are dirty. There is no proper hygiene in the village. And I can share with you with pride, the Design for Change Contest 2013, which happens every time during the Joy of Giving Week, recognizes top 100 schools in India. Out of the top 100, there were 22 Satya Bharati schools. And that is what we deliver. In the next list of special recommendation of 105, there were 24 Satya Bharati schools. So we are not only providing education, but we are providing a value system for these children to be not only productive for tomorrow, not to look at a better future for themselves, but contribute to the economic growth of this country. Thank you very much. May I now invite Professor Govinda, Vice Chancellor, NUPA, who is on the editorial board of Global Monitoring Report. And I'm not going to go into the introduction because I think every panelist is a well-renowned personality in him or herself. Professor Govinda.
Thank you, sir. It's a great opportunity for me to share some of my observations on this very important theme. The theme of the need for a new education policy. If you ask me, is there a need? We had an educational policy coming out in 1960s with the Kothari Commission, based on the Kothari Commission. We had then one in 1986, the National Policy on Education came, and we are in 2014. So I don't think anyone has to say that, whether there is need or not. So many things have changed, as Mr. Mittal already pointed out. So many things have changed during this period. The number of schools have almost doubled. We have more than, not 1.4. Yesterday I was reminded it's more than 1.5 million schools that we have. We have the college, if you look at the higher education enrollment, probably we used to consider it's only 6%. Today, according to various estimates, it ranges from 18 to 25%. So we have expanded very enormously. RTE is a very major change that has come during this period. We are always talking about information and communication technology revolution, which is also influencing the education system. But there are also things which have not changed. What has not changed is that India has the largest number of illiterates in the world. India has the largest number of out-of-school children in the world. And the situation has not very significantly changed. Even now it is 7 or 8 states in this country carry the major burden of out-of-school children or illiterate population that we are talking about. So it is time to think, what do we want to do? We had a policy on education, and today we want to rethink about it. What do we want to do with it? If you ask me a question that should we write another document called New National Policy on Education, I am not very impressed. Bringing out an omnibus document where everything is said correctly, as Gardner says, in such documents we go for writing what he calls correct response compromise. So it should appear very nice, because scriptures cannot have any problems. It should all be very good. So our policies are something like that. I am not very much in favor of writing another document now and say this is our national policy in 2014. But I think what we need to follow, what we need to do, nevertheless, is that we need to identify critical areas of education in which we have to follow a transformative agenda. I want to emphasize on this. We need to change. I don't think that, while we have expanded in most areas of education, in my own experience, I feel that we have not changed anything. There are many things which remain just the same. What are those areas which we need to really change? That's what I will try to concentrate on, 3 or 4. Number 1, I will begin by referring to what Annaji pointed out about inequality in education. School itself, school which should really bring people closer, schools themselves seem to be really dividing people in this country. This is a very dangerous one. We don't very often observe, because we send our children to school, they come back, and then we forget about what is happening in the larger world. If you look at the larger world today, the schools have become ghettos. Literally, that you have one school for the super rich, one school for the little better rich, and the one for the not so rich, and then you can really categorize. And it's not just about economic category. The schools are also classified very often in terms of social categories and all for various. And this is not just about private and government. Even within the government, there are hierarchies of schools that are there. I'm told that in Delhi there are something like 8 to 10 categories of schools that run in Delhi, starting from the lowly MCD schools to Pratibha Vidyalaya that the government of Delhi runs. There are 8 or 10. Are we really doing any justice to what we call education at all by running this kind of thing? How do we really bring about change? What do we want to do? The result of this kind of discrimination that is happening, discrimination is not a good word to talk in policy forums very often, because they don't want to believe. But what is happening because of this kind of ghettoization is that there is an element of silent exclusion that is happening. True that everybody gets enrolled today. Every parent, even the poorest of the poor, want their children to go to school. But what happens, the more dangerous thing that happens is they go to school, but they don't learn anything. This is what I call silent exclusion. Physically they are there, they are misfit in their family because they don't really do what others would do, but they are misfit in the education system because they cannot go because they have not learned anything in this. I think this silent exclusion is a killer. And that is happening because of the way we have structured our school system, not bothered about it. This is an aberration which we need to correct, number one. Number two, I think we had a very small number of schools historically. Gradually it increased. Today we have a mammoth system of schools with 1.5 million schools and all. Have we changed our management system over a period of time? Very little has changed. Changes have happened here and there. Some states have done a little bit here and there. But in reality, very little change has happened, really. And unless we really focus on how the school and in general the education system is governed and what kind of changes should happen, I don't think there is a comprehensive review in terms of what kind of change that should happen. Change has to happen for a variety of reasons, not only because the size has increased. The kind of stakeholders have also increased. Kind of participant diversity in the system has also increased. And how do we really deal with it? When I say stakeholders, in 1980s, when we really wrote the national policy on education, government was almost the single player that was there. Whoever else was there were very small. But during these 20 and odd years, I think the civil society organizations have become a very, very big players in really shaping the whole thing. But are we really taking into consideration this? So is the case in recent years that the private has also expanded. Many people feel private is expanding very fast because of the default of the government schools not working. Whatever the reasons be, but I think we need to really examine that we cannot really hold an adversarial relationship between the government and the civil society and the private. They are all part of the same country. I think we need to think of a governance system which really looks at all of them together and create a new perspective on this. Then only I think we can really take forward. Third point is about everybody talks about quality. Asar keeps reminding us every year that, we are not learning. Since 2005, they are reminding. But I don't think we have done anything to really change that. Unfortunately, every year it is the same thing. Now, people don't take Asar also very seriously. These people keep telling the same story. What is there to really think? This is what they are doing. I think why it is so, we are not really. This is only a symptom for me. Children not learning is only the symptom. I always ask a question to my teachers that if you teach, why won't children learn? We all learned because our teachers taught us. And if you teach, why don't they learn? Probably there is something seriously wrong with the teachers. I'm not really, teacher bashing is a very, very favorite thing in this country, but it's not about teacher bashing. I think we need to do some introspection. What do we do with our teachers? Who becomes a teacher? How do we treat them? What investment we make in this country about for development of teachers? I think India spends one of the lowest in terms of teacher investment in teachers per se. Before they become teachers, as well as after they become teachers. I don't think we really invest enough. Because teachers is the only source that we have in about majority of the schools in this country. The only education resource you have if you go to a village is the teacher. There is not even sometimes there is no book even. And if you don't invest in it, how can education happen for those children at all? I don't think we are really adequately investing in that. As Mr. Mittal also pointed out, you come across teachers who are highly educated. I keep telling that, but you cannot improve the quality of primary schools without looking at the quality of the higher education at the secondary schools. Because many of the teacher eligibility tests have shown, many of you perhaps know that, the Central Board of Secondary Education conduct a central eligibility test for selecting teachers. And these teachers were all wanted to really get employed in high-end schools, the Kendriya Vidyalaya central schools, and then Navodaya Vidyalayas and private CBSE affiliated schools. And most of them all of them were in fact graduates with B.Ed, and many of them in fact had a master's degree and M.Ed. But what happened? Out of 7.9 lakh people who appeared, only 93% people, 93,000 people really passed the test. What is this test, if you ask me? It is only equivalent to 6th grade. No, this tells a big story about the problem that we have. It is a cyclical problem. Only talking about the quality of primary schools is not going to change the quality of primary schools unless we understand this quality and then see in this. This also brings us to me, there is a separate session you are going to talk. In higher education, we seem to be somewhat stuck with the idea of looking at only the high-end institutions in this country. And we are not really looking at those who become teachers are actually those who come out of BA, BSc colleges. And very little attention is given to them. 85 to 90% of enrollment is only in the undergraduate courses of this kind. Most of it is in the hands of private, and nobody is really looking at what kind of colleges run. They tell me in UP in a jocular fashion, a good college somebody said that a good college will open in Diwali and close in Holi, and not so good college will open once in Diwali and once in Holi. You know, it's for admission and then. This is the kind of situation that we have here. I don't think, if you don't really seriously reflect on the situation with respect to undergraduate courses, science and mathematics and humanities courses at the undergraduate level, I don't think quality of school education in this country will change at all. The last 2 points I want to say. We all know that, everybody talks about information and communication technology coming to our school sector in a big way. It will revolutionize. And it never, particularly in southern part of the country. Of course, when I speak to BEOs and DOs in Bihar or, in Uttar Pradesh, when they talk, many of them, they look at in a blank fashion, what am I talking about? But in the southern part of the country, probably many people think that it is possible. But what are we doing in terms of ICT and education is that we are distributing laptops and then and tablets. Will it change really? Where are we really reflecting on our own curriculum in terms of how do we integrate curriculum and the use of the information communication technology? I don't think we have given any thought to that. I believe that a group really need to really look into this. The last point is about, we seem to have taken a liking in this country to really adopt mega schemes which are pan-Indian, top-down schemes, and that will solve the problem of the whole country. Unfortunately, at least my experience for the last 30, 40 years is that the mega schemes of this kind, pan-Indian schemes, have not really made the kind of impact we thought it will make. It may have expanded, but I don't think it has. In fact, people ask me when I go to the villages and all, they say that you say that you are doing SSA, you are doing RMSA, everything. But why is it that the parents are really running away from the government school if you are doing all these things to them? I have no answer. I can really take, people took me to a village in a district in which we started working on district planning in 1992. And then they said that the schools are worse than what they were earlier. So there is something seriously wrong with the approach that we are adopting. Many people point out to me, when we have a top-down mega scheme, actually it throttles creativity down the line. The downstream, they don't develop any ownership, and sometimes they even develop disaffection to this kind of activities, and it throttles creative solutions to be found, alternative creative solutions to be found. The last point that I want to make, on which we need to think of a transformative agenda, is that our investment in education, in my view, is not balanced. It is not well thought out. We keep spending, but not really in a comprehensive way. We look at where we should spend. I do participate in so many of these meetings of the Planning Commission and all. But personally, I feel that we are not taking a comprehensive view of where we should strategically use the limited resources that we have, which can have a value addition, a multiplier effect that it can have. I don't think that kind of thinking is there. We had a few years ago a committee going into it. I was also a member of that. How to increase the investment in education to 6%, what it means if you want to increase 6%. But unfortunately, nothing happened. The government only set up this committee. That is why I want to end by saying that if government sets up another committee to come up with another national policy on education, we will come out with huge document, which will be afterwards used as a teaching material in the B.Ed and M.Ed and all of them. But not necessarily it will really change. For me, therefore, identify 6 critical areas like the one that I have pointed out. Think of a transformative agenda, come up with actionable papers of that kind, and follow up on it and see what is the best that we can really do. That is the kind of policy that I am thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Govinda, for bringing out certain facts. But I think you raised a big question. Why are no actions being taken and we keep hearing the same thing again and again? May I now invite Ms. Siva Kami, former IAS officer and author, to share her views. Ms. Siva Kami.
Thanks to the chair and also to the Indian Express for giving me an opportunity to share my views. And with due respect to Professor Govinda, who said the policy seems to be all right on paper, like any other scripture. But I think if you go through the document, you will find, while you in practice, so you'll always like to change the policy as well. So the education age, as per the Right to Education Act, is 6 to 14 years. So there is a necessity to change to 4 to 16 years because the education starts at the age of 4, as you all know. And also, the document says that there is a great need for several thousands of schools and several lakhs of teachers. But where is the allocation as per the Right to Education Act? Even developing countries, they spend almost 10% of their GDP on education, but India, unfortunately, is supposed to spend 6%, but it is not even spending 6%. It's near about 4% it is spending. So therefore, there should be a commitment in the policy that minimum 6% or 6 to 10% should be spent on education. And they talk about neighborhood school. But most of the bills, even currently there is a bill on land reforms under circulation by the Ministry of Rural Development. So they talk about reforms in the Land Ceiling Act without specifying how many acres one family should have. So according to me, I would suggest 5 acres per family is more than sufficient. But they should specify. Similarly, neighborhood school means what? Why don't we change into a slogan called every basti, Dalit basti should have a school? Because you are targeting the underprivileged. You are targeting people who have not gone to school. And there is a great, dropping out of school. There is a great percentage among the ST and SC students. So why don't you change your slogan in the document itself that every 1,000 population or I'm talking about elementary school. I'm not talking about secondary school. Because the Right to Education policy also says the distance between school in the secondary education is between 6 to 10 kilometers. So geographically secluded Dalit habitations require a school. If you take, for example, in Tamil Nadu, is there any school in each Dalit basti? Even bigger villages they don't have. They are forced to go to a caste Hindu village for school. And even now, today, yesterday I was there in the village in Vellur, Tattacheri. There is a caste riot. In front of me, somebody was beaten and so there was a bloodshed and we went on a kind of an agitation. And these people are saying that the school is located in the caste Hindu village. We are not able to send our children to the school. So how would they find it convenient to send the children continuously to a school which is located far away and also caste-ridden? So therefore, the document should specify that every Dalit habitation should have a school, something, because you call it near neighborhood school or nearness school or a school at Dalit. It doesn't make much difference, but if you specify, then it is easy for the state governments to follow. Another thing I would like to share my experience. When I was Secretary Adi Dravida and Tribal Welfare Department, I was inspecting some of the residential schools in the tribal habitations. I went to Ooty, where a small village, and there is a water problem. So I went there, and I inspected the school. The teachers were not at work. Many of the schools, this has been a perennial problem. And I tried to suggest something. Why don't we train the tribal candidates in the teachers training program and post them back in the tribal areas so that they stay and work? Because the problem of the teachers also we can understand their problems, because their children need a good school, they need good medical facilities, which we have not provided in the tribal areas. So we can't expect the teachers posted in the tribal areas to stay there and work in the schools. So the alternative could be train some tribal candidates and post them there. I was trying to move the file in the cabinet. I could not succeed. In fact, the then Chief Minister said that, I was trying to become very communal and trying such a suggestion that tribal teachers should be posted in tribal school. Like in Muslim school, Muslim teachers should be posted. And in Christian school, Christian teachers should be posted. What is this? He was asking me. So I was looking at it as a very genuine geographical problem. But whereas the government is looking at, in its own way, communal and caste-oriented fashion. So therefore, there should be a change in the policy of the government, and it should be, every word of it should be spelt. What goes in practice, because you have to follow the document at least in certain fashion. Another experience I would like to narrate is, I was trying to attend a summer camp in one of those villages in Tiruvannamalai district. It's called Dusi Mamundur, some years back. I was questioning those children about gender. I said, who's got more freedom, whether the boy, because the children were 6 to 8 standard. I asked them who had got more freedom. Obviously, the boys all shouted that we have got more freedom than girls. I said, please explain. Then they said, evening when they go back to home, they don't come out to play. They are all glued to the TV, the boys said. I asked the girls, I said, why do you do that? The girls replied that we are not allowed to play with boys outside, and we don't have a playground. How genuine is the problem? Because the gendered education starts with a spatial problem as well. So if there is any space for both the children to come and play, because it's prevented in the villages, because geographically there are several aspects. I don't want to go into the caste problem again and again, but if you visualize the village, it is separated, and the children are not allowed to mingle with each other. Only in the school they are able to play. So when they go back, they retain the village values. So our system of education, it's not only should be linked to employment and also linked to value system as well. As Mr. Anna Hazare was saying in the beginning of his speech, the great divide between the haves and the have-nots and also different, caste society we have. So it is widening. So our education system should contemplate how this big divide can be bridged by our projects. So in that way we think, because this gendered education starts with the behavior at home and also in the school and also in our policies. So according to me, each village should have a playground for female children so that they can, because education, manual activity is part of education. Therefore, we should encourage such space for girl children. The national policy of girl children at the elementary school contemplates about 3,000 rupees of assistance to girl children. It shouldn't stop with that. We should have more suggestions. And to be concrete, I would like to put forth 5 important suggestions for a better education system, because the education system starts with the infrastructure. Many of the schools you go and see, because in the city, because of lack of space, there is no adequate infrastructure provided, no library, no playground, no facility at all. With that kind of a lack of infrastructure, we can't expect students to come out in flying colors. And also, this infrastructure is basically dependent on the budgetary allocation. And budgetary allocation, as I said, it should be minimum 6%, and it can be increased to 6 to 10% wherever it is necessary. For example, in the case of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, the percentage should be increased to 10%. And there is a special component plan which is under operation in each of the state, under which, according to the population of the SC/ST, the budget should be in proportionate to that population. For example, Tamil Nadu has 18% of SC population and 1% of scheduled tribe population. The budget allocation should be 19% of the total budget. Out of this 19%, 10%, out of this total 19%, is a special component plan. What prevents the state government to allocate 10%? Instead, they try to spend it on electricity. They try to spend it on big irrigation dams in the name of scheduled caste. And they want to spend it on agriculture in the name of scheduled caste, whereas under those heads, electricity, water, and big dams don't really reach the poor and the Dalits. So instead, if the government determines to spend 10% of the special component plan, 10% of the tribal sub-plan on education, nobody is going to prevent it, and it is going to improve the facilities, more number of schools with good facilities, and each tribal location will have a good residential school manned by their own teachers. There is a training school which is located in Ooty itself to train the tribals. Ooty, unfortunately, is not the hub of the tribals. The important tribal in Tamil Nadu, the largest, are the Malayalis and Irulas. So the Irulas are nomads. So we should contemplate in such a way that the budget is spent on the areas where these tribals are located. The training schools are also located. Second suggestion is education. Yeah, I'm completing. Education and employment should be linked along with the value system. If we don't have the value for gender, or if you not teaching the exploitative structure of the society in our schools, where will the children are expected to learn from them? And the third is the public school and the neighborhood school should really benefit the poorest of the poor, because which is the target population when we say education for all. And we should have an active management committee in each school. At least 75% of the parents should partake in that management committee. And the management committee also decides on the language, because there is a great amount of disparity between the language spoken and language written, and also different dialects within our Tamil language. And the problem is, if it is different, then we can welcome it. But one is kept inferior to the other, that we don't welcome it. Therefore, this language aspect also the management committee should take into account. These are my suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your views. I would now like to invite Dr. Kiran Bedi, an eminent personality in her own right, to share her views with us.
Can I have my slides quickly? Is it loaded? Are they loaded? Are the slides on? Can I have the slides, please? And give me the slide mover. I want to thank the Indian Express and Mr. Prabhu Chawla in particular for his call to me to be at this remarkable education conference. You might be wondering, what am I doing here, having been in policing for 35 years? Because my relationship with education started 26 years ago. And those are the slides I have for you. As they're ready, I'm going to just show those quick slides, but I'll tell you the story. And we are the solution. We've stated the problem by now. We all know the problem. I want to offer you the solution we offered to ourselves 25 to 26 years ago. And it begins with the story when I was a police deputy commissioner of North Delhi in Delhi. We had a sprawling slum of over 100,000 people opposite the Red Fort. And that was a crime breeder for me. As a police officer, it was a crime breeder for me. And they were not a vote bank. They had no schools. It was one of the dirtiest slums you could see. I had a slide of that to show you. The number of flies and the number of children who were in the slum were almost the same. As I would walk the streets, there would be children and flies ahead of me. That's it. I was shamed and shocked. It was full of drug peddlers. Women were drug peddling. Children were rag picking, doing substance abuse. The question before me was, what do I do with this crime breeding place which had no schools? No education, no social development. Women were drug peddling, rag picking, begging. We, ladies and gentlemen, became the solution. It started with the key cause, crime prevention. How do we do that? We had no infrastructure. We need all this. I'm only offering what do we do with what we have. I'm not saying the ideal solution. I'm not an education expert. I am a problem observer and a solution provider as by my nature. So what can I do now with what I have? So what did I have? I had goodwill in the entire district of Delhi. I had credibility, where if I would ask, people would give. So I involved the entire Chandni Chowk and town hall area of rich men and women to work with me in that slum. And I said, donate me money for teachers, and I will run schools here. Ladies and gentlemen, we start to run gully schools, and they ran in the gullies themselves. I would show you a clip when it comes, whenever it does, of a gully school. We ran 165 gully schools. अन्ना हमने गली स्कूल चलाए उस एरिया में जहां सिर्फ क्राइम ही चलता था. आप स्कूल कह रहे हैं ना, आप चलाते हैं जिनके लिए अपराध करते थे. हमने 160 स्कूल खोले अन्ना 25 साल पहले. उनको गली स्कूल का नाम बोला. छत नहीं थी अन्ना, कुछ नहीं था. गलियों में हमने स्कूल लगाया क्योंकि गलियों में ही तो बच्चे रहते थे. तो मैं स्कूल की वेट कैसे कर सकती हूँ ना. तो हमने उन गलियों को, I'm going to speak in Hindi for Anna's benefit because I've asked Rakesh to bring me earlier because Anna ne lunch pe chale jana hai. So I'm sorry for those of you who'll miss, but I want to reach out to Anna and the majority here. तो Anna हमने वो गली स्कूल खोले. हमने एक टीचर रखा 3-3 घंटे के लिए उनको अनपढ़ता दूर करने के लिए, ताकि इलिटरेसी उनकी खत्म करें. और बच्चे कहते हैं नहीं, मेरे पेरेंट्स कहते हैं नहीं, बच्चे तो हमारे लिए कमाते हैं, रोज 100 रुपया लाते मांग के, कूड़ा चुन के, हम क्यों भेजेंगे इनको स्कूल में. मैंने कहा मत भेजो स्कूल में, मैं तो गली में ही लगाऊंगी. मुझे बता दो कौन से 3 घंटे कूड़ा चुन के बाद बच्चे मिलेंगे मुझे वो बता दो. तो बोले उन्होंने अन्ना टाइम तय किया कि कितने बजे मेरे बच्चों का स्कूल लगेगा. हमने उतने बच्चे ही लगाया. किसी ने कहा 2 से 5, किसी ने कहा 12 से 3. हमने उतने बजे ही लगाया अन्ना उस यमुना पुश्ता की झुग्गियों में. I'm saying here is where we were, we became the solution. Today, this is a revolution which is needing. We need right solutions. We need practical solutions too. So what do we do with what we have? तो नहीं बड़ा slide जब मिले तो बता देना. Let me know when the slides are ready, okay? Then I'll just run through them. So एक स्कूल, जिस स्कूल ने मुझे बुलाया स्पोर्ट्स डे पर, जिस स्कूल ने मुझे इंक्लूडिंग संस्कृति, wherever I was invited, मैं जिस स्कूल में गई, मैं कहा स्कूल में आऊंगी, एक टीचर दोगे, एक टीचर डोनेट करोगे. एंड वी हैड 160 टीचर्स डोनेटेड एंड पेड फॉर बाय स्पॉन्सर्स. Ladies and gentlemen, we reached out to thousands. We started to do the 3R with them. You won't believe it. The good news is how the children now wanted to go to school. They said, अब हम begging नहीं करेंगे, हम भीख नहीं मांगेंगे, अब हमने शर्म आती है हाथ लगाने. सो हमारा टीचर्स हमारे बच्चे टीचर्स घूमते थे मंदिर, हनुमान मंदिर पास में था, तो टीचर को देख के भाग जाते थे. हो हमारी टीचर देख लेगी क्या मांग रहे हैं. धीरे धीरे मांगना बंद हो गया. अब वो कहते स्कूल खोलो. अन्ना सरकारी स्कूल कोई नहीं था दिल्ली का. हमारे प्रेशर से उन्होंने एक टेंट का स्कूल लगाया, लेकिन हमने अपने स्कूलों को और आगे चलाया, प्राइमरी तक ले गए. लगे रहे, हमने छोड़ा नहीं। रिटायर्ड टीचर्स को जोड़ा, बिजनेसमैन को जोड़ा, महिलाओं को सिलाई केंद्र में लाया, हमने सोशल डेवलपमेंट बनाया। मेरा कुछ नहीं गया, मैंने सिर्फ अपने रसूख को यूज किया। और अन्ना हमारा नवज्योति इंडिया फाउंडेशन की एजुकेशन की रेवोल्यूशन वहां से शुरू हुई। अपराध गिर गया, नशा गिर गया, महिलाएं काम पे आ गई, बहुत वो साबित करती है स्टैटिस्टिक्स। मैं ये कह रही हूं, वी बिकेम द सोल्यूशन। आई वांट टू शो यू देन, इतने स्कूल बनाए, सरकार ने हमें डिमोलिश कर दिया क्योंकि कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स आ गई, दे वांटेड दैट लैंड, तो हमें सब डिमोलिश कर गए। हम हारे नहीं, हम जहां वो गए उस सड़क पे उनके पास चले गए साथ में। उनकी छत भी नहीं अभी बनी थी, हमारा स्कूल खुल गया, हमने सड़कों पे स्कूल लगाना शुरू कर दिया। और हमारे पास आज 5000 बच्चे उस बवाना की बस्ती में आज पढ़ते हैं। आज मैं गली स्कूल नहीं चलाती, मैं रेमेडियल चलाती हूं। और रेमेडियल के लिए कानून है, सेक्शन 4 ऑफ द राइट टू इंफॉर्मेशन एक्ट। वो क्लियरली कहता है कि जहां बच्चा ऐसा ड्रॉप आउट वाला कैटेगरी है या उसकी कोई स्पेशल नीड्स है, स्पेशल फैसिलिटी होनी चाहिए। And today, the challenge before the society is 90% dropping out children. I deal with dropout children. We, as Navjyoti India Foundation, deals with dropout children. And I have the project director, Neetu Sharma, here so that she can be with you today and tomorrow to answer. Neetu, can you recognize yourself? Can you stand up wherever you are? Here you are. That's Neetu. She's the project director of these 5,000 children of dropout children in the slums of West Delhi. And she works with them selflessly. Friends, 5,000, and the results are, our survey shows, the national dropout rate is 48%. Delhi dropout rate is 23%. Our dropout rate is only 3%. Only 3%. And we have children taken from the no gully schools now. Children go to, we mainstream the school. उनको बच्चों को mainstream करते हैं, बालवाड़ी से, सरकारी बालवाड़ी सर्व शिक्षा अभियान से चल रही है। उनको स्कूल में दाखिल करते हैं, स्कूल के चाहे बाहर ही बैठते हैं, क्योंकि स्कूल में इतनी भीड़ है कि वो बाहर बैठते हैं। ये दिल्ली के स्कूल की बात कर रही हूँ, बाहर बैठते हैं। लेकिन उसके बाद नवज्योति स्कूल में आते हैं, स्कूल के बाद स्कूल। दिस इज अ कॉन्सेप्ट कॉल्ड स्कूल के बाद स्कूल। एंड देयर कोई ड्रॉप आउट नहीं। बच्चा अगर पढ़ता जाता है, ये सारी पार्टनरशिप है कम्युनिटी से, कॉर्पोरेट से, गवर्नमेंट से, साथ आसपास के इंस्टीट्यूशन से। उनको फिर हम मेन स्ट्रीमिंग करते हैं, पहले दाखिल कराते हैं, फिर मेन स्ट्रीमिंग करते हैं। जो बच्चा पढ़ना और चाहता है, हमारे पास इंस्टीट्यूशंस की पार्टनरशिप बन चुकी है, उधर स्कूल बच्चा लियाकत के अनुसार जाता है। जो बच्चा कहता है मैं काम सीखना चाहता हूं, मेरे वोकेशनल स्किल है, हम उसको वोकेशनल स्किल में ले जाते हैं। बट इट्स प्ले वे to placement. It's a partnership. Very rightly being said by Mr. Chawla and all my prior speakers. It is time for partnership. We be the solution. I would offer this platform a model of 3S. The 3S model, friends, is one is Shiksha, which we are doing. We don't let any child drop out. पढ़ता जाता है। दूसरा जो अन्ना ने बोला, संस्कार। इसलिए मैं अन्ना के सामने ये बताना चाहती थी, जो अन्ना आपने हमें सिखाया, जो आप करते रहे, वही हम आपके मार्गदर्शन पे हम कर रहे हैं, वह संस्कार। द सेकंड एस इज संस्कार। अब हमने उनका गुरुकुल बना दिया, इट्स कॉल्ड द चिल्ड्रन यूनिवर्सिटी, कॉल्ड द चाइल्ड, बच्चों नवज्योति गुरुकुल। सारे 5000 बच्चे का एक रोल नंबर है, गुरुकुल में है। वो अपने आप को एक दूसरे को सिखाते हैं, मूल्य सिखाते हैं। डिपार्टमेंट हिस्ट्री ज्योग्राफी का नहीं है, डिपार्टमेंट पंक्चुअलिटी, डिपार्टमेंट समाज सेवा, डिपार्टमेंट राष्ट्र भक्ति, दिमाग है हम लोग अपने एक रिस्पेक्ट, सारे मूल्यों की, इनफैक्ट इवन इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी, एक दूसरे को कंप्यूटर सिखाने की। तो गुरुकुल 5000 बच्चों का गुरुकुल भी बन गया। सो स्कूल के बाद स्कूल से गुरुकुल का कोई पैसा नहीं लगता। ये आपस में फिर गलियों में अपने मीटिंग करते हैं, छत पर करते हैं, बगीचे में करते हैं, हम उनकी मेंटरिंग करते हैं, कोई पैसा नहीं, हम अपना समय देते हैं। 3S मॉडल इज शिक्षा, संस्कार और स्किल्स। उसके बाद हम स्किल देते हैं, किस बच्चे ने क्या बनना है। वो कुछ प्लम्बर बनना है, उसने अकाउंट सीखना है, उसने बिजली का काम सीखना है। हमने यहां तक कि यूएई के साथ नेटवर्किंग कर ली है कि किसी ने इस स्किल कर ली तो हम उसकी एम्प्लॉयमेंट बाहर करते। हमारा बच्चा नवज्योति का कोई भी बिना शिक्षा के, बिना संस्कार के, बिना स्किल के नहीं है। ये 90% को आज जरूरत है साथियों। मैं समझती हूं हम सब ये कर सकते हैं अगर हम चाहें, अगर हम अपना गुडविल यूज करें, हम अपनी गुडविल को इनकैश करें दूसरों के लिए, बच्चों के लिए। ये आंदोलन की बड़ी सख्त जरूरत है। ये क्राइम भी प्रिवेंट करता है क्योंकि बच्चों को संस्कार मिल जाता है। मेरे एंगल से क्राइम तब होता है जब ये बच्चे आवारागर्दी करते हैं, जब ये गलत आदतों में चले जाते हैं और फिर सिर्फ एक गंदी चीप एंटरटेनमेंट में जाते हैं और लड़की उनके लिए एक एंटरटेनमेंट बन जाती है। सारा क्राइम का पैटर्न भी बता रहा है कि बहुत सारे लड़के जो ऐसी क्राइम्स अगेंस्ट वुमेन करते हैं वो ड्रॉप आउट्स भी हैं। ड्रॉप आउट्स भी हैं, मैं नहीं ड्रॉप आउट्स ही है, नहीं, ड्रॉप आउट्स भी हैं। बहुत सारे ड्रॉप आउट जो रिसर्च बताती है वो ड्रॉप आउट हैं। वो बहुत सारे ऐसे जिनको पेरेंटिंग नहीं मिली। मैं ये नहीं कह रही हर गरीब को पेरेंटिंग नहीं मिली, बहुत गरीब बच्चे बड़े लायक हैं, बहुत उन्होंने लियाकत दिखाई। लेकिन जो माँ बाप अपने बच्चे को सींच नहीं पाते, जो बच्चों को मूल्य नहीं दे पाते और वो सिर्फ सड़कों में रहते हैं और गलत संगत में चले जाते हैं, गलत आदतों में चले जाते हैं, वह कल का खतरा है। अगर हमने समाज महिलाओं के लिए भी सुरक्षा और बढ़ानी है, हमको अपने बच्चों को सही शिक्षा, लड़का हो या लड़की, देना पड़ेगा। तो मेरे पास कुछ नहीं था। मेरा मॉडल क्या है, ये गांव में भी हम कर रहे हैं, हरियाणा के 50 गांव में और दिल्ली की आउटलाइंग एरियाज में। वी कैन बी द सोल्यूशन। एवरी ब्यूरोक्रेट इज अ सोल्यूशन, every teacher is a solution, every NGO is a solution, every resident welfare association is a solution. सरकार is a very big solution, but एक है जो सरकार कर सकती है, एक है जो हम कर सकते हैं। मैं आज इधर इसलिए आई थी ये बताने के लिए, अपना प्रचार नहीं करने के लिए कि मैं भी, हम लोग 25 साल से सोल्यूशन में हैं और 25 साल से ना जाने कितने लाखों को हमने भटके हुए रास्ते से सही रास्ते पे लाए। ये हमारा 3S मॉडल है, शिक्षा, संस्कार और बेटे पेन ड्राइव है, अब फिर कभी और देंगे। नाउ इट्स ऑल टाइम इज ओवर। आई हैड द पेन ड्राइव बट आई सेट देम थ्रू द ड्रॉप बॉक्स। Well, what we do is during the day when we get another time. Are you interested?
They can run during the off.
Yeah, we'll run it another time because my turn is over now. But I don't want to take more time. But we can distribute the. But pen drive was with me, but they said they'd received it. It doesn't matter. That's over. Neetu, doesn't matter. But what we'll do is we'll circulate this slide, print out of the slides. But this is the model. शिक्षा संस्कार के बिना अधूरी है, खतरनाक है, बल्कि खतरनाक है, क्योंकि शिक्षा दे दी, संस्कार ना दिए तो हथियार में एक वेपन दे दिया जो कभी गलत तरीके से वो चला सकता है। इसलिए हम ऐसी पढ़ाई ना दें जो एंटरटेनमेंट ढूंढे, क्योंकि उस अंग्रेजी बोल सकता है या बड़े वेस्टर्न कपड़े पहन सकता है। और तीसरा, इट्स लाइक हेड, हार्ट एंड द हैंड्स। वी नीड टू वर्क ऑन द हेड, द हार्ट एंड द हैंड्स। हैंड्स इज स्किल्स, तो वो लास्ट स्किल हम ऐसे बच्चे को पढ़ाते हैं, पता चल जाता है बच्चे के म्यूजिक की ओर है, स्पोर्ट्स की ओर है, योगा की ओर है, ड्राइंग की ओर है, हम उसको उधर ले जाते हैं ताकि हमारी एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़े। साथियों, ये 3S मॉडल हम अपनी नवज्योति इंडिया फाउंडेशन की तरफ से देने आए हैं। मैं जिंदगी भर स्टूडेंट रही हूँ और मैं जिंदगी भर एक टीचर भी रही हूँ। सो इट्स द स्टूडेंट इन मी एंड इट्स द टीचर इन मी विच ब्रिंग्स मी टू दिस ग्रेट, इतना बढ़िया कॉन्क्लेव। और मेरी खुशकिस्मती है कि उसका उद्घाटन आज अन्ना हजारे के हाथों में हुआ। आपने मुझे प्रेम से सुना, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू किरण। बिफोर आई इनवाइट मिस्टर राजपूत, मैं अन्ना हजारे जी को ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि जहाँ ये देश में बदलाव लेके आ रहे हैं, वहीं शिक्षा के माध्यम से जो बच्चे बदलाव लेके आते हैं। हमने दिल्ली में देखा, फायर क्रैकर्स, पटाखे बजने बंद हो गए क्योंकि पोल्यूशन होता था। सरकार बोलती रहती थी नहीं बंद होता था, जब स्कूल के बच्चों को बताया गया तो हुआ। मिस शिवा कमी ने अभी बोला कि हमको दलित बस्तियों में स्कूल खोलने चाहिए क्योंकि कास्ट रिडन सोसाइटी है। मैं आपको ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि हमारे एक गांव के स्कूल में बच्चों ने अपने माता पिता से बात करना बंद कर दिया। कारण था कि जो बस्ती शेड्यूल कास्ट लोग जो बाहर गांव के रहते हैं, आप उनसे बात नहीं करते, आप उनके बच्चों को हमारे स्कूल में पढ़ने नहीं देते। उन्होंने फोर्स किया कि उनके जो पेरेंट्स हैं वो उस बस्ती में जाएं, उन लोगों को गले मिलें, उनके साथ चाय नाश्ता करें और उनके बच्चों को परमिशन दी जाए कि वो इसी स्कूल में उन बच्चों के साथ पढ़ें। ये बदलाव ऐसे लाया जाएगा इस मुल्क के अंदर। हमारे बच्चे, माइनर जो बच्चों की शादियां होती हैं, उसको रोकने के लिए नुक्कड़ प्ले करते हैं और पेरेंट्स एफिडेविट देते हैं कि हम अपने माइनर बच्चों की शादी नहीं करेंगे। तो मैं ये बताना चाहता हूं कि जहां आप एक बदलाव लेके आ रहे हैं, शिक्षा के माध्यम से गांव में हम बच्चों के थ्रू ये बदलाव लेके आते हैं, और ये कोई करना मुश्किल नहीं है। यू जस्ट हैव टू पुट योर, एज किरण सेड, mind, heart, soul into this, and we can achieve what we want to. May I now invite Mr. Rajput to share his views, please.
But yes, when I was listening to him, I was reminded of a letter which Mahatma Gandhi wrote in 1922. He said, our people will not get happiness even if Swaraj comes tomorrow. 4 factors will drive away the happiness. And he mentioned injustice would increase, tyranny of the rich would be there, burden of administration, and 4th was defects of elections. I asked somebody how elections came in his mind. He said he has studied the British parliamentary system very deep. In that very letter he writes, there is only one ray of hope if education reaches everybody. And there are other details also. In 1925, there is another instance which I would like to quote. In Young India, October 1925, he quoted 7 social sins. Politics without principles was one of them. Education without character was one of them. Commerce without morality was one of them. Pleasure without conscience was one of them, and a couple of others. The point is, all those 4 points which he has mentioned in 1922 were a prophetic description of the future. Point number 2, and it relates to the first one. If you study the freedom struggle of most of the countries which got freedom after India and 1 or 2 before that, in no description of the freedom struggle of any country, so much attention was paid to education as it was done in India. We had the concept of education. We had a policy of education. It was also implemented 1937 onwards. And this was the policy which Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Zakir Hussain finalized. Now, you cannot say that this policy would have remained as such. Dynamism was inbuilt in it. And it would have changed with time. But in nutshell, they have found out a policy which had deep roots in the soil of India and which has committed to progress. In 1996, in Geneva, a book was released, Learning the Treasure Within, written by Jacques Delors and a group of other eminent people. It described the shape of education in the 21st century, and it has been discussed. Jacques Delors delivered a lecture and said, education in every country must be rooted to its culture and committed to progress. This is not a sentence which has been coming here from any organization or any political party. 1996, October, I was present there. Yes, we had every readiness to change our policy in 1947, but we continued with the same model, and the results are before us. In 1986, there was a national policy on education. Prior to that, in 1968, there was a policy on education. 1968 policy had a vision. For example, millions of girls studied science only because of the provision in a 1968 policy that every boy and girl will be required to study science and mathematics up to class 10. Earlier, there was no such provision. It was supposed that girls cannot read science and mathematics and they should go to spinning, weaving and home science. Many girls would not know this particular point. Thanks to Dr. D.S. Kothari. He had the vision. The main problem is, you have a Right to Education Act. There are glittering progress reports of RT implementation. But how can you have quality if more than 1 million vacancies exist in schools that look after classes 1 to 8? How can you expect quality if there are about 7 to 8 lakh para teachers who are neither qualified nor trained? And therefore, all our lament about these things has no meaning. The point I am making is, even if you change the policy, not much will happen. Unless until the system, the participation, the networking, the relationship of the society and the governments, the relationship of the industry and education, corporate houses and education, the social support to education, the employability component, the entrepreneurship component, all these factors which sporadically come are discussed in great detail in the policy at the level of implementation. Policies are fine, but the program of action is never translated into actual action plan in the schools. That is our problem, that is our experience, and that is our learning of all these years. And if we do not do that, another policy will go the same way. In 1986, we had a policy. Then the government changed. They appointed a committee under Mr. Ramamurthy, and there was a Ramamurthy committee report. Sri Narasimha Rao, who was education minister in 1986, then became the prime minister. And we decided in the ministry, I was part of the ministry, that how do we respond? So in 1992, we brought another policy. And if you read the two policies, there is hardly any difference. A reference was made to teachers. I have made a reference to teachers. If you read the 1986 policy and 1992 policy, not a word has been changed on the paragraph on teachers. Let me recall a sentence. No people can rise above the level of their teachers. This is a paragraph quoted in the policy in 86 and also in 96. And if we formulate another policy, we shall again do the same thing. Some terminology may change, but this sentence will remain there. Now, last point that I would make is, everybody has talked of character building. I often quote, and maybe last year also I mentioned this, Dr. D.S. Kothari, who chaired the National Education Commission in 1964-66, was asked after about 25 years, sir, if you become the chairperson again of a new National Commission on Education, what changes will you make? He said, I will make the changes. He had studied about it, he had discussed it. He said, my earlier report submitted in 1966 was Education for National Development. Now if I make another report after 25 years, its title would be Education for Character Building. Then they asked, why? What is the change when you say? He said, at that time, all the Western countries were only pleading for progress and development, development and progress, and we borrowed that terminology. If we had gone for character building through education, even if Bokaro came a few years later, or Bhagra Nangal came after a few years later, we would have prepared men and women of character and commitment. Any education policy must try to prepare young persons of character, commitment and dedication. That is missing. In the year 2000, a recommendation was made that patriotism is not a vanished commodity. We have to build people. We have two major factors that education must respond to. It is social cohesion and religious amity. And about this, a recommendation was made in the schools. Basics of all religions must be made known to every child. They should know the commonalities and learn to respect differences. After all, unless until we work together, we cannot progress. We will suffer many things. Social turmoils, unnecessary problems. It was also mentioned that 5 values are acceptable to everyone, every civilization, every sect, every faith, every religion. Truth, peace, non-violence, righteous conduct, and brotherhood or love. The matter went to Supreme Court of India and it said, making children aware of basics of all the religions is not against secularism, it will strengthen secularism. It will strengthen social cohesion. We were not talking of religious education, but education about the religions, their basic philosophies, and subsequently also their comparative philosophies. unless and until our schools teach acceptance of otherness, acceptance and respect of otherness, we will not be able to go ahead. This is the biggest challenge that education has. Normally, we do talk about vocationalization of education, skill orientation education, entrepreneurship and employability I mentioned. Many things we have. We often refer to in our official meetings, particularly the ministry meetings, empowering the girl child, education for girl children, all those things. But, okay. Yeah? No, some time can be extended. We always talk of these things, but I stay in a city called Greater Noida. And around me there are a huge number of girls. They can't go to school because both the parents go for work. There is no provision. And when they go to school, 101 questions are asked which are not mentioned in the RT Act. The actual situation in elementary education is far more depressing than what we get in official reports. 96%, as Kiran Bedi mentioned, has no meaning unless until all these children really continue. We have 3 words in the National Policy on Education of 86-92, access, participation and attainment. We have not been able to achieve all the 3 even till this particular year. We need to change the policy, but the policy has to be based upon the ideas of Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, Zakir Hussain, Dr. Ambedkar. We have so much of inputs, but the point is we do not look inwards, we look only outwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Rajput. I think you made a very important point, education for character. Since we are running way out of time, I'm just going to leave 2 questions for the audience, and I think this is something which we need to deliberate on an ongoing basis. The first is India ready for radical restructuring of archaic education policies? I'm just leaving this thought for the next panel as and when they want to address. And the second is changes needed to ensure smooth functioning of national program for education of girls at elementary level. Prabhu, since you're going to walk out, I'm just going to mention one thing. I think the New Indian Express group and yourself should make this as a monthly review through articles on the progress being made on the questions and the action program which are generated at the forum. Because I think meeting year after, just after 1 year and discussing the issues, we need to also track that. I'm going to take 2 questions from the audience. Yes, please. If you can identify yourself and the question to whom you're addressing to.
I'm Krishan Khanna. I run a non-profit think tank in Bombay. This question is to you, Mr. Mittal. Actually, in countries like India, which are really developing, based on what we have seen in the rest of the world, 80% of the students should really be going for skill building, which is not happening. And although you have also pushed this and many of the other panelists and others, the mindset change in India is still against skill education. And in fact, everybody wants to go to college. We have 40,000 colleges now and only 10,200 skill centers. So that is my question which I think needs to be addressed. And the other thing is this, that there's no emphasis on pre-primary education. In fact, the best teachers in the world are in pre-primary education because 90% of the human brain is developed between the age of 1 and 7. So I thought I'll just...
Thank you. I think Ms. Sivagami did raise this issue of the education needs to be from 4 to 16 and that takes care of pre-primary education. In fact, every government school should have a pre-primary class to begin with. On the second, on skill building, I sit on the roundtable for improving school education at the national level, Ministry of HRD. And I had proposed this, suggested this to the then HRD Minister, Mr. Kapil Sibal, and now Mr. Palam Raju is taking forward that agenda. I firmly believe that vocational training should start from class 9 onwards in all the schools. Because we just can't be all doctors, engineers, scientists kind of a situation. And the matter of fact also is that today when the industry wants feet on street in the rural areas to promote their products, they just can't get salesmen. And what we have seen, every time we've set up academies of skill building and capacity building, a 3-month course for a child who's a school dropout or a school pass out can get a job for 8, 9, 10,000 rupees. And I think that makes all the difference. The state governments have started talking of this, but it's at a very, very slow pace, and I'm absolutely with you that this needs to be fast-tracked.
You are very right in raising a question about skill development program. Government of India has introduced a program called Modular Employable Skill, where about starting from 2 months to 3 months and in between education. So you can go back to work and come back for training again and pursue your education, and again you can go for skill development. But the problem is that there is no sufficient allocation, and there should be a public-private partnership in the modular. Because if you keep on training with a poor infrastructure, because I have been in charge of this employment and training program in Tamil Nadu, and I visited a number of institutions where this employable skills are produced, and trained people are trained, and very poor infrastructure, and some of them that issue certificates without even training, and they send them to industries, and industries are expected to incorporate them. So it is ridiculous. Therefore, if there is a public-private partnership, suppose the industry wants to have a particular skill, they should also participate in the training program with the government or private partner. Thank you.
That are happening through the National Skill Development Corporation. There are large partnerships. Yes, please. There are many hands up.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Vasudha Prakash, founder director of VExcel Educational Trust. I just want to review some of the points you raised regarding teacher non-availability of teachers. But one of the very moot points that perhaps we must focus on is the quality of B.Ed education. Are we emphasizing on child development, what has to be taught when, how it has to be taught? Because teachers are actually the only people who can keep children in school. Because if the teacher has a good relationship with the children, automatically you attract like magnets the children to school. So I think the quality of B.Ed education, the offerings, the number of teacher training programs, I would think that's one of very, very great areas of focus. Maybe
no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that goes without saying. There are many hands up. What do we do?
1 minute, sir.
You and then over there.
I would like to speak from there, sir.
No. You'll have to just be very short in asking the question.
I do not want to ask a question, but give you a suggestion, if you permit me to do
if
so.
it can be just summarized.
1 minute.
Yes.
Charitra Nirmanam Gyan Vigyanat Srestaram. This translated into English is character building is the ultimate goal of education. We have talked all about character, good values, everything. But how do we implement this? I remember my days in my school in Ranchi, there was a subject called moral science. And through simple storytelling from Panchtantra or many such stories, all available for different classes, you can tell them one single story every day or even once in a week. That will build the character. Character cannot be built in 3 hours or 3 months.
No, sorry for interrupting you. It is you and me who have to start this. We can't tell others to do it. I think the parents have to take this responsibility equally along with the teachers. Yes, please. That's the last question.
Welcome to Chennai. How about a separate ministry in par with Ministry of Higher Education exclusively for primary care education, as she said, for emphasis on the inner city, rural and remote areas. I don't know whether we have a ministry like that. Whoever is going to form the government the next year, the education conclave can suggest to have a minister like Kiran Bedi to lead us.
Okay, I think that suggestion will be passed on. The girl behind. And that's the last.
Yeah, this will be our last question for this session.
Hi, my name is Rachna, and I am an education entrepreneur, and I have a question regarding the whole skill development program and efforts that we're talking about. My question is, we're talking about skill development, but what skills? is there any way by which we can be futuristic, and is there any plan to see what skills are really relevant for employment in the future? You see a huge gap in what education, what skills, and the employability of these people. I mean, there's a famous quote by saying, how many engineers do we need to change one light bulb? And that's the state of the economy and education. The last report that a corporation like NSDC has for a lay person to look at is dated back to 2009. And I'm just wondering, a person like me, if I have to skill myself, not just from a higher education perspective, where do I look to know where I should skill myself if I do not have the exposure and if I'm a middle class person from a small town?
Yeah, I can only share with you, as I mentioned earlier, there are large initiatives being supported by the National Skill Development Corporation, as well as various ministries where the private sector is engaged in imparting vocational training. And the outcome is measured by not only the certificate, but also a job for the person concerned, and that person remains in that job for, I think, a period of 6 months to 12 months. So it is not only just giving a certificate, but also ensuring employability. I think that is being done. There are a number of initiatives which are available on the web. You want to respond?
You asked about the areas in which skills need to be developed. According to the recent survey, IT-enabled services, automotive, textiles, and construction, which are the 5 key areas where skills are required in large number. So if people are trained in these 5 areas, I think they are quite employable. Thank you.
So this ends the session. Any questions can be asked during the lunchtime now. So may I please ask you to give a big hand to my fellow panelists for taking our time and sharing their views. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And before you step off stage, I request Mr. Chawla to please come up on stage and give away mementos to our chairperson and our first set of panelists. Another big round of applause, as we've had a very effective session and a great start to the conclave, ladies and gentlemen. We request Mr. Chawla to give away a memento to the chairperson, Mr. Rakesh Mittal. You can continue applauding, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. R. Govinda, Vice Chancellor, NUEPA, will receive a memento from Mr. Chawla. Mr. J.S. Rajput, thank you very much for joining us, and Ms. P. Sivakami, thank you. We'll have a group photo opportunity right away.